What's up everybody, I'm Hoops and Hip Hop and welcome to another video on cut Pokemon content. Now in this series we have been going through every generation of Pokemon, looking at the best cut content that every single region that's currently in existence has to offer, and we finally made it to the most recently officially released Pokemon region, the Alola region, and the 7th generation of Pokemon. Now, compared to past videos, this one is going to be a little bit different in terms of its content, because the cut content that we know about from the Sun and Moon generation is a bit more of a hodgepodge compared to some of the other generations, naturally because it's the most recent one that's officially released. The games and Generation 7 as a whole isn't even 3 years old yet, so we really haven't had a lot of time to learn about cut content from these games and this generation, and I don't exactly want to wait 5 to 10 years to make this video, so we're just gonna go ahead and make do with what we got. However, with that being said, if in the future we ever learn about something crazy related to cut content from Generation 7, I will definitely make a follow-up video about it, as well as for any of the other generations where that might occur. So if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe. With that being said, however, there's still a lot of really interesting cut content that we do know about right here and now about the Sun and Moon generation, and even a couple things about Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, since those were also in Generation 7, that are really interesting that just didn't make it into the final game for one reason or another. And obviously that is what today's video is all about, so without any further ado, here is the best cut content from the 7th generation of Pokemon. The first piece of cut content we're going to be talking about here actually comes from the pre-release period of Sun and Moon itself, more specifically the very first trailer that revealed the games entirely. Now granted, this is something that hasn't been 100% officially confirmed to have been scrapped from the game, but given the context, it very much seems like that is the case, and that would be the focus and possible implementation of various types of vehicles. Now, there were a couple of vehicles in the final game, but they literally just served as decorative pieces for the overworld and had no other purpose whatsoever. However, given their presence in the game at all, combined with their presence in the reveal trailer for Sun and Moon itself, it seems like there might have been something bigger planned for vehicles within these games. This is because within the very reveal trailer for Sun and Moon, an assortment of concept art was shown showcasing different vehicles, including the pickup truck that we see in the final game, but also an ambulance and a fire truck that never made it into the game in any way, shape, or form. And given the fact that this concept art made its way into the reveal trailer for the games themselves, tells me that they must have had some level of importance for the game originally, otherwise why would they be in the reveal trailer for the game? It's obviously anyone's guess as to what they could have done, and like I said, we don't even know 100% for sure if this is the case, but given the context, like I said, it's a very interesting and very likely possibility, and if there had been cars and ambulances and fire trucks that actually made their way into the final game, it obviously would have shook up the gameplay of Sun and Moon considerably. Another very interesting thing that was cut from the Generation 7 games is once again the Eternal Flower Floette. Just like the Generation 6 games, the data for the Eternal Flower Floette remains within the code of the Generation 7 games. However, even though this is likely only a carryover from X and Y, the Eternal Flower Floette actually does have its own unique Pokedex entry in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which is unique to those games and does not appear in any other game where the data for this Pokemon is present. Its Ultra Sun Dex entry states that the flower it's holding can no longer be found blooming anywhere. It's also thought to contain terrifying power, and its Ultra Moon Dex entry states that terrifying energy is concealed within its ominous flower, but Floette still swings it about innocently. The fact that these dex entries are exclusive to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon tells me that even after all of this time, Game Freak was still trying to figure out a way to incorporate Eternal Flower Floette as an obtainable event Pokemon within the games, but for one reason or another, they just weren't able to make it happen, despite the fact that they got so far as to giving it a dex entry within Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. It's very puzzling to think about what could have possibly held them back from including this Floette in the game, but for now it's just going to remain one of Pokemon's biggest unsolved mysteries. phase. An entire location for the Generation 7 games that was seemingly cut altogether is none other than Akala Meadow. The name Akala Meadow exists as a location name within the data of the games, heavily suggesting that Akala Island was going to get its own meadow, just like the other 3 islands of the Alola region also have. The meadows of every island are where you're able to find the nectar that is able to change Oricorio's form. However, on Akala Island, since there is no meadow for this island in the final game, the pink nectar that would have been found in this hypothetical Akala Meadow can actually be found at the Royal Avenue instead, which tells me that most likely Akala Meadow was originally a location on this island, but once they implemented the feature of Battle Royales and they needed a location to serve as the hub for this feature, they ultimately made the Royal Avenue and they had to have it replace the Akala Meadow on Akala Island, which is why they probably scrapped it from the game. Personally, I would have much rather had the Akala Meadow in the game as opposed to the Royal Avenue, because the Royal Avenue and the Battle Royals as a whole just did not do much for me personally whatsoever, but nevertheless, it's what we ended up with in the final product. Another unused piece of content that can be found within the data of the Generation 7 games is an unused battle background for what appears to be a gym. Now, it's anyone's guess as to what the original purpose of this background was going to be. It very well could have been the original look of the Cantonian gym in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. However, it's also possible that it could be a remnant from when gyms were originally going to be a part of Sun and Moon before they were likely replaced with the Island Challenge. The reason why we can say this is thanks to a Game Informer interview with the director of the game, Shigeru Omori, where, when talking about the Island Challenge, he states that that feature actually really wasn't locked down or figured out until we really went into the main debugging phase. He then goes on to say that this feature was implemented so late into the game that the programming and art teams were not actually able to help them with this idea, and so it was up to the game designers to create this whole new method of operation for the game based on what was already programmed into the game and the assets they already had to work with. In the Game Informer interview, Omori says that I had to figure out a way that just us game designers could create these features and figure out the content of the actual trials. So we had a basic scripting language we could use, but obviously we couldn't create new visuals. We were trying things like maybe we have a sound quiz or something, so we came up with a lot of ideas based in the restrictions we had. These statements can actually tell us 2 huge things about Pokemon Sun and Moon. Number 1, since the Island Challenge was implemented so late into development, it's very likely that the traditional gym system was in place before it was scrapped in favor of this new idea. And number 2, this actually explains a lot as to why it seems like the Island Trials are very shallow in terms of their content, because the game designers were the ones that had to create this from scratch essentially when they did not have the help of the programmers or the art teams, because this was such a late inclusion into the game. While I will give Omori and Game Freak credit for trying something new and freshening up the formula for the Alola region, I think doing it in this way where you kind of cram it in last second, where you don't even have the help of your full development staff to make it as good as it can be, probably wasn't the best idea, and I think we would have been much better off if they had actually kept the original gyms that were likely intended for the game from the start. And speaking of cut features from the Sun and Moon games, one huge feature that was planned but was cut was the ability to transfer Pokemon from Pokemon Go to Pokemon Sun and Moon. There is a various amount of data within the games, including a mystery gift message that shows that transferring Pokemon from Pokemon Go to the Pokemon Sun and Moon games was actually planned to be a thing at one point in time, but was scrapped likely due to a number of different reasons. The 2 most likely reasons being either time restraints, technical limitations, or both. Pokemon Go came out in the middle of 2016, just a few short months before Pokemon Sun and Moon was planned to launch, and it's probably probably unlikely that this was going to be in the game from the start, since Game Freak and the Pokemon Company couldn't have possibly imagined how popular Pokemon Go was going to become, so it's probably something that they implemented later on as sort of a last-ditch effort to integrate the two games. However, there just wasn't enough time to make this feature work properly. I can also very easily see that technical limitations could have been a factor as well, because transferring Pokemon from a smartphone to a 3DS, given the somewhat limited capabilities of the 3DS as a piece of hardware, could definitely have arisen some complications in making this work smoothly, which is likely why they ended up saving this idea for Let's Go on the Switch, where they had a more powerful piece of hardware to work with. Moving on though, there are also two unused overworld models for Zygarde's 10% form and 50% form within the game. This obviously suggests that there was either going to be some kind of static encounter with Zygarde's 10% form and 50% form, or it was going to be involved in the story more heavily than it was in the final game. Game Freak very obviously tried to salvage as much as they possibly could of Zygarde's enhanced story from the very likely planned Pokemon Z when they transferred Zygarde's complete form as well as its 10% form and its core forms into Sun and Moon, even though they had no place in that game whatsoever. And these overworld models for 10% as well as 50% Zygarde within Sun and Moon are likely further evidence of what was originally planned for Zygarde before all of that was just washed away and we just ended up with a random complete Zygarde in a region that it didn't belong. In the completely random but still pretty cool category, there's actually 3 unused rooms within the player's house that are fully modeled into the game, and that would be the bathroom, the laundry room, and the garage. These 3 areas are fully modeled, likely meaning that you were able to go into these areas within your house, but they are inaccessible in the final game. These rooms were likely scrapped just due to the fact that they were deemed unnecessary, but even if they didn't really serve much of an important purpose, I think they absolutely should have remained in the final game, just due to the fact that it could have fleshed out the game a little bit more, and it just would have been awesome to go into a bathroom in a Pokemon game. Like, that's something I've been waiting for literally all my life. I don't think it would have hurt the game at all to have left these 3 rooms in the final game for players to explore, but obviously Game Freak decided that it was not needed for one reason or another. And for our last piece of cut content from the Sun and Moon games before we move on to the Let's Go games, there was actually an event planned involving Silvally and the Move Tutor in Howley City, where they were going to be able to teach all 3 of the Grass Pledge, Fire Pledge, and Water Pledge moves to Silvally all at once. However, for whatever reason, the programming for this event is absent from the final game, and as such, Silvally is only able to learn the Grass Pledge move and cannot be taught either the Fire Pledge or Water Pledge moves in the final game. And to round off the video, we've got a couple of interesting things about the Let's Go games, since they also technically are a part of Generation 7 as well. First off, it was actually revealed in an interview with Junichi Masuda that Psyduck was actually going to be the second mascot Pokemon for these games alongside Pikachu before Eevee was ultimately chosen. The reason why Psyduck was chosen is because it's one of Junichi Masuda's favorites, but it was scrapped because it's actually the same color as Pikachu, and obviously wouldn't have allowed for much of a variety in terms of the different versions. And last but certainly not least, even though Pokemon in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee do not have abilities like they do in the main series games from Generation 3 onward, they are actually programmed within the games themselves. Whether or not these were going to be a part of the final game initially, or whether they were just programmed so they could be transferred over to other games with abilities, is currently unclear, but the idea of Let's Go with abilities is certainly an interesting one, to say the least. And there we have it, everybody. That was the best cut content from the Sun and Moon games, the Let's Go games, and the 7th generation of Pokemon. Now, like I said, this generation is currently still going on and is still very young, so at some point, we're bound to learn more about it in terms of its cut content, and if we ever do, be sure that I will make a video covering it. So if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe, because there will be plenty more to come in the future. As I said, if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for way more Pokemon content every single week. And if you would like to support the channel further, be sure to check me out on Spotify, give some of my Pokemon remixes a listen, which directly goes into supporting the channel here, which is greatly appreciated. And if you would like, you can also check out my podcast over on the UCast Studios YouTube channel, where you can hear me talk about Pokemon even more, and that greatly supports the channel too. With all that being said though, I'll be back on Tuesday with another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell as always so you can know when it goes live, and until then, as always, I hope you know I love you guys very much, and I will smell you guys later.